Welcome to Friday, December 15th, 2023. Your day weather podcast being brought to you by Hot Springs County Travel and Tourism, reminding you that as temperatures get colder and snow is on the horizon at Thermopolis, you can always find yourself in hot water. Well, there's just not much happening. The storm that brought snow to southern Colorado and parts of New Mexico and rain and snow to parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. And what you see there, a beautiful shot of Mount Albert in southwest Colorado. After that storm is moving on out and heading into areas to our east, high pressure is going to come on in. So this quiet stretch of weather is going to come on in and settle in and will be here for a while. So there's just not much going on. Now, as the week progresses, low pressure will form and move right along the west coast, bringing rain to California, some snow to the high Sierra Nevada. But the storm is just going to kind of sit there. We've kind of got ourselves in a blocking pattern, and that's going to allow the weather to move very slowly across the region. So we're going to kind of be stuck in a pattern where it'll be wet along the west coast, dry in the Rockies, active weather in the Midwest and the East. We're still expecting some form of change in the weather by late next week and next weekend, but we still have a lot of questions on whether or not those changes will bring big impacts or little impacts. Certainly early next week, we'll have a better idea, so stay tuned. But without a doubt, the dominant factor in the West and across most of the Rockies and the High Plains, with the exception of the West Coast, is there's just a whole lot of nothing. So let's talk about some other things. We did have yesterday a very strong solar flare. In fact, it was an X flare, and it was the strongest so far of the current solar cycle, which says a lot because we've had some strong flares so far. You can see it here on the imagery. This is all from spaceweather.com. So for you sky watchers, you aurora chasers, a geomagnetic storm watch is in effect. So for the next 2-3 nights, and with this high pressure coming in and skies relatively clear, there could be some opportunities. So you'll just have to keep track of those things and keep your eyes out for possibly some aurora activity. This was a very strong X flare. Take a look at the satellite imagery this morning. The storm system that rolled through the south is centered right here over the northern part of the Texas Panhandle. This system is going to merge with this little guy coming in up here. This will end up being a pretty big weather maker for many areas of the east, parts of the far east Midwestern areas, as it will be a rain producer and snow on the back side of it. But this low pressure here is going to stall out off the west coast, causing a broad area of high pressure to come on into the Rockies. And this is where we are. You can see the high pressure building in. You see a low off the west coast. This is where we're going to be at about noon today. Then this is by noon on Monday. High pressure is still overhead. So we'll have the weather in the Great Lakes, the east. We'll have the weather here along the west coast, but the high pressure ridge right here is just going to stay. So the end result is going to be a period of time where we just don't see much. Now, this is by Monday. This is by Wednesday. By Wednesday, that low off the west coast really takes a track south. I think the question on whether or not what happens late next week and the weekend before Christmas is what happens with this. It could go technically all the way down into Mexico, get really cut off and take a really far south track. Or it may be drawn more northward towards the central Rockies. And that's where we're just not sure on this. Right now, the models are really taking this far south, probably too far south. But as it sits along the west coast, it will feed rain into the west coast areas, California picking up some needed moisture. But you can see this high pressure is going to cover a large part of the central, parts of the southwest, parts of the south as we get on into next week. So this is going to be a stretch of weather that goes through a deep part of next week where there just won't be much going on except in the far west. And there you can see it. So when we take a look at the precipitation forecast through next Wednesday, so this is through Wednesday, look at this large north-south area of dry conditions for the most part. Just nothing going on in the Intermountain West. The West Coast rain comes on in, but it doesn't have a big push east. It's more like the storm just kind of tracks along the coast heading this way. We've got to have these systems want to come up and do something more like this. So that means if you've got travel plans outdoor plans, you want to be outside between today and through at least Wednesday of next week, there is nada, zip zero going on. Temperatures will be climbing to above average, and you don't get much of the W word in this pattern either. There really won't be too much wind to worry about. Some, but not much. So stay tuned. We'll hopefully have more to talk about on Monday. In the meantime, have a good weekend.